You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Rogue. Each week, we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. Coming up on the Roundup, 1 week of Phyrexia is in the books, and new staples are rising in Modern and Pioneer. We take a look at all of the technology from the first week of play. What worked, what didn't, and what could be the next big thing. All of that and more is coming up. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I'm your host, Dan Schriever, also known as Cave Dan, and I'm joined today all the way from Buenos Aires, Argentina. You know him as Mord to Light. It's Emi Sagasti. Emi, welcome.
Heyo, how's it going, Dan? Emi here, better known as Mord online, because for some reason, for the first time in forever, you didn't say known as Cave Dan online. The patterns, Dan, the patterns.
I'm gradually trying to shift it because some guy told me that he kept searching for the actual phrase Cave Dan online.
Cave Dan online?
Oh, that'd be an interesting screen name. Like, this is digital me. It's like my...
It's like my persona.
Exactly. I've uploaded my consciousness into the cyber web.
If that was on purpose, I love that I caught on it. I love that it was something so common that you got the comment and I caught on the difference. Ah, perfect.
It is I, Cave Dan, online. How may I be of service?
Cave Dan online. Ah.
If I ever have like a chat GPT version of like this show, maybe we should do that. We should start asking the chat bots, the AI bots, to brew with these cards.
We just give them the cards, propose a deck list.
Yeah.
And then we ask them for a 3-minute script. And just fire up.
Mm-hmm. How are you doing, Mord? How's your week going?
All good. Getting a bit more on the working side of the community. Now that, luckily, I got that job offer, but back to brewing now on the weekends.
Yeah, you're busy now.
Now that I'm actually busy and I can spend the whole day firing gobos against the walls and seeing what sticks. Ah, gobos.
Congratulations, though.
Thanks so much.
Huge.
But yeah, haven't had as much time as I wanted to brew, but came ahead with some builds for T-Bar. I'm trying to make Atraxa work, and I'm hitting my head against the wall with some other cards that are just goddamn unplayable, but I want to play. I have already made my rat deck list.
Oh, okay.
It has beautiful stuff like Call of the Death Dwellers.
Oh my god. Really?
Of course, I have Crypt Rat.
What? Okay.
It's a 4-mana removal spell.
So call the Death Dweller 2 and a black. Return either one creature or multiple creatures. Total CMC 3. One gets Death Touch.
Yeah, you pay 1 for a Crypt Rat and remove everything. Boom.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That kills all your beautiful rats.
A small price to pay for salvation. Then you just play Coco Rat and everything is fine.
So you actually tried to find useful rats for this deck. You didn't just...
It's mostly changelings.
Say, okay, here's 20 rat colonies and we'll hope for the best.
No, it's actually a Magda deck, but we have Crypt Rat.
Gotcha.
And Call of the Death Dweller to get back Magda, plus Mothra Changeling. And the Rat Overlord, the King of Rats, as the way to get more gas going.
Yeah, Karamonix the Rat King, if you're not sure what we're talking about. This is the new Rat Lord from Phyrexia All Will Be One. Pretty sweet card. We'll see if this deck actually pans out. I'm excited to hear how your testing goes.
It's just the most insane ringleader we have ever had.
Well, when you put it that way, I'm like less excited because Ringleader is not that big of a card, but maybe coming from a Goblins player like you, that's a high compliment.
Yeah, but this is so much bigger than Ringleader. Like, 1 less mana, 1 more card, a bigger body to boot. It's all upside.
And of course, rats.
Of course, it gets rats. Come on! What else can we want? But today we're not here to talk about rats. We're here to talk about something a lot more magnificent.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our first full week of results in with Phyrexia All Will Be One. Bunch of tournaments played, mostly online, but some in paper. People trying out all the new cards in both Modern and Pioneer. We're going to take a look at what happened, get you up to speed on the latest tech. We have some new staples. Dare I say new Modern staples? Is that fair to say, Mord?
They seem to be, at least a few of them. We have some cards that seem that are gonna be a straight up upgrade to the Modern Panorama and are just gonna stick to the walls. And that we're just gonna see them getting played consistently, to say the least.
In Pioneer, I'm not ready to call anything a staple yet. I know people have been testing out a lot of stuff. I was playing a bunch of Tivar lists myself. We'll check in on that format as well. So this episode is our weekly roundup, our week 1 technology. Later in the week, our second show will be our brew session. We've got a spicy one picked out. It's Atraxa Grand Unifier. A true Niv Mizzet type card. A true Niv trigger. Flipping 10, the grandeur, the showmanship of that. You gotta love that. It's even bugged in the same way that Niv Mizzet is bugged.
It has the exact same bug where it doesn't show exactly what cards you got, which is just lovely.
Beautiful. So that's going to be coming up on our Friday episode, and that's also when we'll tell you about some of our testing results. I played a bunch of Tyvar. Saw a lot of people talking about Tyvar. Didn't see a lot of Tyvar in the 5.0s yet, but we'll get into why that might be the case.
Yeah, I saw a lot of Tyvar. I saw a lot of Tyvar chat. I didn't see a lot of Tyvar winning.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's early. There's still time.
It can still try and win.
So big show, a lot to get into. But before we jump into all that, we got a little housekeeping we'd like to do right at the top, which is to remind you that if you're enjoying this program and would like to support us, the best way to do that is by joining our Patreon. You can find that at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing. Make a pledge at any tier that you like. That gets you immediate access to our wonderful Discord community. We also have other fun perks. We have some merch, we have tokens, we have beautiful playmats. We have monthly polls. You get to vote on cards. We've been struggling with this Rivaz of the Claw. I think it's almost time for a new card for us to work on.
Yeah, Rivas overstood extent via the holidays and such, but eventually we're going to have to let go of the little Viashino Warlock.
I think I'll start gathering nominations as soon as we finish recording this episode.
Makes sense.
Get your brewing caps on. And we do have 3 new patrons that we would like to welcome to the Faithless family. They are Edward B., Jeremiah W., and Duran's Hybrid. So thank you very much to those individuals, and welcome to the Faithless family.
Yeah, thanks so much. Remember, it keeps us going, and we love the appreciation from it. And you also get to join our amazing Discord.
Exactly. All right, Mord, take us into Modern. What's new in the People's format?
So, in Modern, the biggest card to make a lot of waves has been the Mycosynth Gardens. We are yet to be sure if this is a wave of hype or a wave of true progress, but Amulet players are all over it.
There is something specific about Amulet, whether that's Amulet players or the way that people talk about Amulet, that makes it very hard to distinguish between hype and reality. People fear this deck, justifiably so. It's terrifying, and you feel helpless when they're just going off on you. But one thing that we know is that all versions of Amulet that were published this week were playing 4 copies of Mycosynth Gardens.
Yes.
So this is not a question of, will we play 1 or 2? Will it make it into the deck? No, they're saying, yeah, we're absolutely playing 4 copies of Mycosynth Gardens, and the question is just, how do we adjust the deck around the card?
Yeah, exactly. You have some weird spicy one-offs, like a Friday's Modern Challenge playing Awaken the Woods and still winning. Victor top-8ing the Modern Showcase Challenge, which has 2 Cultivator Colossus and 3 Azusa main deck. Always for Mycosynth as ways to get a lot of Amulet figures.
One thing that really surprised me earlier in the week was the discussion of how accommodate these 4 colorless lands. Mycosynth Gardens doesn't tap for any colors, so you are going to have to like remove some colored sources for colorless sources, and that does make it a little bit harder to fit in all of your Dryads, your Dryad of the Elysian Groves, because those in turn require you to play a Valakut. So some people were saying, okay, the solution to this is to cut all copies of Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and we don't have to worry about a Valakut kill at all. The mana base is just cleaner. We have our Urza Saga and our Mycosynth Gardens, but then beyond that, it's mostly just bounce lands and the few utility lands that we have to have, like Boseiju. I don't know like how true that's going to be. I think you can find about half and half right now if you look through the results from Magic Online. Slightly more than half, we could say, are still playing Dryad of the Elysian Grove, the full 4 copies. On Twitter, there was some discussion. Dom Harvey was saying maybe the solution is to just play 2 Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Like, it's not going to be a bad card. It still helps you get to your Titan in the games where you don't have Amulet. If one thing we think is that Mycosynth Garden makes the Amulet games extremely easy. Right now, every time you have an Amulet, you have a backup Amulet, or 2 Amulets for an immediate prime time / cultivator kill. All right, that's good enough. Let's just focus on the other games where you don't have access to the Amulet. And for that, Dryad is one of the better cards.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue with the Dryad is not the Dryad itself, but how much damage it does to the Valakut, that besides playing the 8 colorless land and the blue Tolarias, you're also playing 2 Valakuts. And it's a matter of, can we afford that to play Dryad? You always want Dryad, you don't always want Valakuts in your deck.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way of putting it, right? It's the Valakut question less than the Dryad question, because even the decks that are cutting Dryad, they're still compensating by going up to like 4 copies of Azusa.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a matter, if I can run Valakut, I will play Dryad because I want to play Dryad. But can I play Valakut?
Another question was, will people adopt this strange new card, Green Sun's Twilight? And this, I think the answer is no, but there were some results, mostly from the softer events like the Friday League dump, where people had put 2 or sometimes 3 copies of Green Sun's Twilight into their Amulet Titan decks and were able to find success with that.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is going to be like a long-term inclusion. I think people tried it and perhaps realized that what we need is more consistency, not less. We don't need to put
a bad collector company that gets lands.
Yeah, the floor on this card is so bad. Like, it invites you to just put in all of your mana and you could get literally nothing out of it.
And because why not? If your deck is broken, you can play whatever card you want.
I think Awaken the Woods, clearly stronger than Green Sun's Twilight. That's the new meta.
Awaken the Woods meta. That's where we have arrived. But because Mycosynth Gardens isn't the only card making some serious waves in Modern.
Yeah, I mean, for all that we talk about Mycosynth Gardens and Amulet, the deck didn't really do that well. Like, it didn't dominate, or it didn't even really show up in great numbers in the showcase challenges that happened over the weekend. Why is that? Is that because people were gunning for this deck? Or is it the case that there's just too much hype?
I think they both lined up. Like, it was mostly like, there was hype for it, and also, not only where there was hype for Mill, there's a lot of Titan. And that's bound to, of course, make Mill players just roll over themselves.
Yeah, so that's the second deck that's adopting a new staple for Modern. So Dimir Mill picking up full 4 copies of Jace the Perfected Mind. I gather from what you're saying, more that Mill has a beautiful matchup against Titan.
Yeah. When we talk beautiful, it's like one of the best. Like 80-20.
So why is that? Just out of curiosity.
Mill 10, Surgical Titan, Stretch My Hand, Game 2. Worst case scenario, you get a turn 2 Titan, but I mill your land that provided haste, so your clock is super slow.
Okay, so it's not fixable by just adding Emrakul to my Titan deck.
No. The surgical effects are devastating as well. You have at most 3 threats, and they're all relying on resolving a Titan to get going, or having a Colossus plus a lot of spare mana. Something like turn 1, mill you, play a crab, you go turn 1, nothing, opponent goes turn 1, mill you for 6, surgical and amulet, game over. you mill any of your storm cards and you lose the game.
I'm wondering now if, like, when I'm playing my Crabvine deck against Titan, I should focus more on milling them. I guess without a surgical, it's not worth it.
I mean, if you have surgicals and with 2 crabs and a surgical, I would just mill them into Oblivion.
I don't usually play surgical. I know this is like a, I'm like a single issue voter. I'm like, that's all good advice, but what does it mean for Crabvine?
I mean, yeah, I get what you mean. I can see what you mean, but how does this impact the vine?
Exactly. Exactly. But for everyone else who is not a Crabvine player, what do we make of this new version of Dimir Mill, and specifically the inclusion of 4 copies of Jace?
Yeah, the 4 copies. I played against Mill yesterday, and Chase was amazing at being annoying. It just went +1, +1, -2. Like, it just stopped my attackers for 2 turns and then proceeded to draw 3 cards before going out.
So that's like a unique thing that Mill didn't really have access to that before.
They didn't have any efficient 2-for-1s that played to the board live. And their only 2-for-1 was the draw 3.
Visions of Beyond. I guess during the Lurrus days, they would occasionally get a Lurrus if you focus too hard on stopping yourself from getting milled. You might just randomly lose to Lurrus. Is Jace kind of like that?
Yeah.
Like if you forget to bring something for Jace?
Not quite. It's more of a super annoying if it's ahead. Like, if the mill player is able to develop a Jace on a semi-empty board, it's gonna mill you for like 20 cards. Or draw them like 3 or 5 or 4 cards.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the question for me was, okay, if we think Jace is good for the deck, you have to cut a card to add a card. They're adding 4 copies of Jace, so what are you cutting? We're definitely not cutting the crabs, right? The Hedron Crab, the Ruin Crab, those are locks, and it looks like people consider Fractured Sanity, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Archive Trap, Drawn with a Lock, and Visions of Beyond to be locks, right? So that's 20 cards you have to play. So it's really just a question of, I mean, am I going to cut my surgical effects? Am I going to trim on 1 mana removal? I think we're all going to still play 4 Fatal Push, but some mill versions that were not including Jace, they just played like extra removal. They played like a couple Blood Chief's Thirst and surgical extractions, whereas some of the Jace versions didn't play any surgical effects main deck.
That's weird that it doesn't. They tend to do at least a few.
Yeah, I guess it's like a hedge. If you feel like you know what your deck is.
Like, for example, you have the one that's playing 0 Chase is running 4 Surgical. And one of the versions with Chase that went 28 in the challenge was also running 4 Surgical.
There are other cards you might occasionally see, like, Mesmeric Orb is not unheard of. I see a Murderous Cut in one of these decks.
Yeah.
Those are the flex slots, basically. Like, how many surgical effects, how much spot removal, or supplemental mill.
Yeah, and when they have 0 Surgical in the main deck, they have at least 5 copies in the sideboard alongside Extirpate.
Mm-hmm. So, just as a modern player, Mord, how do you feel about mill? Like, mill being a larger presence in the metagame?
I hate Mill because for Goblins it's an unwinnable matchup, but I just don't hate the archetype as much as most people. I just feel like it's bad burn, and I just deal with the fact it's bad burn.
Okay. So keep your emotions in check. Just seeing your cards get milled away or exiled away, you're just like, well, whatever.
I don't feel any anger. I don't feel any effect at seeing my cards get milled, because I know I wouldn't have drawn them regardless. Like, it's just statistical, so I disregard it.
Cool, calculated, Mord online. He's a machine playing modern.
You can look at me online as cool and calculated Mord online, all a single word, no hashtags.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. It's just burn at this point. It's blue burn. Used to be a more expensive burn deck. I mean, yeah, I guess these cards do cost more mana than burn, but that's basically all it is. Do you advise that people should play an Emrakul in their sideboards, or are we not at that point yet?
I have a Gaia's Blessing in my sideboard starting 2 days ago, so I think you do. I think there's a good argument to have an anti-mill card in your sideboard, at least for the following weeks, because if there's a Titan hype, you can always expect mill players to play mill. Mill players love playing mill, they just need an excuse.
Yeah, and the old wisdom that, oh, you can just beat Mill with one sideboard slot, that's not as true as it used to be because of Tasha's hideous laughter. Like, if their Tasha's happens to hit your blessing, it's almost like you didn't have a blessing in your deck at all. Emrakul at least absorbs the Tasha's, but
yeah.
So just be aware of that. You still need to actually kill them. Don't take too long to kill the Mill player.
Yeah. With goblins, it just takes you one turn too long in general, so if it can buy you half a turn, or one full turn, it tends to be enough for you to swing. But that's why you just bring in one of those effects.
All right, so between Mycosynth Gardens and Amulet and Jace and Mill, those are the new cards that you should add to your modern box if you're a completist or something. What about everything else? We talked about so many cards in our previous shows. Did any of them make an impact on like the rest of the metagame?
Well, we have a one-off Skrell being grinding station for some ungodly forsaken reason.
Yeah, I think at this point, I was not convinced by any of these other appearances. I just included them as possibilities. I think people are testing out, what if my meta deck, my tier deck, can make use of one or two copies of this random card. Skrelv in Jeskai Breach, it made sense to me when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's right. I mean, it protects Emery and it's an artifact for Emery. It's a mana for your Mox Amber. That is enough for a 1-drop, right? The bar is not that high for a 1-drop to clear, so sure, why not? But, it was only a couple Breach players were playing Skrelv. I think most of the more successful lists did not play it.
What did surprise me the most, though, is the Atraxa in the Showcase winning Modern Qualifier.
Yeah.
Because it's not in any deck list, it's a one of Atraxa in creativity in the deck that won the Modern Showcase.
A little preview of our Attracta discussion coming up, but if you put Atraxa into a creativity deck, what happens? Well, it means that every time you resolve creativity, you're not necessarily getting an Archon of Cruelty. Like this list from Manohito, MTGO player, had 4 Archons and 1 Atraxa. Let's say they go creativity X equals 2. You're either getting 2 Archons or you're getting 1 Archon, 1 Atraxa. If you do creativity for 1, you might not get an Archon at all.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
Like, I keep seeing pictures of Atraxa. Like, yesterday I saw this picture of in Vintage and Atraxa getting Black Lotus, Omniscience, Show and Tell, Mental Misstep, Boseishu, Oko, and Atraxa. Like, its own trigger got a Show and Tell that cast... It got a Show and Tell to put an Omniscience to cast an Atraxa and protect itself all by itself. And that's one of the most insane things I have ever seen a card do.
Okay, that's kind of nuts. Is something like that possible in Modern? Well, let's just look at creativity. When you put your Atraxa into play, this build has 8 enchantments. It's got Fable, it's got Leyline, it's got a good number of instants, Lightning Bolts, Spell Pierce.
I would like to see the number of that. What's the chance of finding 1 enchantment? Because if it's like over 70%, that's insane. So like 8, 10...
Yeah, it's very high. Yeah, I think in this build... I mean, this build has 4 Ren and 6, so you got Planeswalkers. It has 5 sorceries, 4 creativity, 1 persist, and looks like 13 instants, 5 creatures, although you don't really want the creatures in your hand.
Yeah, you're at 80% to find an enchantment.
This has plenty of card types, and we were saying during our previous shows that you don't need to do that much deck building, if any, to accommodate Atraxa.
Yeah, looking at the amount of sorcery spells, so this is like borderline guaranteed to be a 7/7 lifelink that draws you an enchantment, an instant, a planeswalker or a sorcery, and a land. So it's gonna be a 7/7 flying vigilance death touch lifelink, draw 3 spells and a land, which is an insane amount of value. Because there's non-easy ways to kill a 7/7 lifelinker for a lot of decks.
Yeah, so I feel like I don't need to be persuaded that Atraxa is powerful. I just need to be persuaded that when you resolve creativity, you don't just want Archon every time. I'm wondering if a few things are possible. Theory number 1 is that this player, Manohito, just concluded that Atraxa is good enough that I sometimes want Atraxa. It's like it's more powerful than Archon. Theory number 2 is that they're specifically worried about Orvar the Allform. Atraxa does not screw you against Orvar the way that Archon does. Theory number 3 is that maybe they just saw this Mill versus Titan grudge match and were like, I'm not playing into a surgical meta with just 4 Archons. I need an extra threat.
And they went for the spicy one-offs there that might carry their ass.
I think this is one of the few creativity decks that really did well in the big events. So maybe that is like a little metagame call there. Don't get surgical. Keep an extra threat in the deck. Although I don't know if this actually beats Mill.
I can see that. And the deck list, either the player was amazing or the deck list kind of worked, so...
All right, well, we'll have plenty more to say about Atraxa in our brew session with Atraxa, so we can leave it at that for now.
Yeah, following that, we have Kemba in Hammer Time, which there I think it's just a mistake. That one I think it's just memeing. Yeah, Kemba isn't great. I mean, in Pioneer it is, and the Pioneer cat deck list is super fun. But that's...
Yeah, I was not super persuaded by the Kemba here.
It's like a bad core outfitter.
I saw another player had put Nahiri, the Unforgiving, into their Hammer Time deck as well. Again, this felt more just like, yeah, let's just put a couple copies in. I don't know how much the Nahiri did. A card that surprised me was seeing Sheoldred's Edict, a 4-of in a Rakdos Scam deck. This was from the Modern Showcase Challenge, so a high finishing deck list from Cristiano7. They just played 4 Sheoldred's Edicts, main deck, and it never occurred to me that this card was actually so desirable that you would want a bunch of copies in your main deck. What's the thought process here?
I mean, it's an amazing removal spell. In Pioneer, it's just changing the Dimir deck for it to be a lot better. It's a quality card. There are not many ways to instant speed remove a Planeswalker in Magic.
So in Pioneer, I could picture, okay, Dimir Control, I think that's one of the deck lists that someone like Nassif was doing well with this week. But we're talking about Modern here. A 2-mana removal spell in Modern, 4 copies, that's a surprise to me. Like, they're not playing any Fatal Push. They're playing 2 Lightning Bolt, 3 Thoughtseize, 1 K Command, 4 Sheoldred's Edict, and then, of course, your 4 Furies.
4 Sheoldred's Edict might be a touch too much, but it wouldn't surprise me to see like a 2 of Edict in a lot of deck lists. As a way to answer threats, it can kill a Murktide, it can kill a Planeswalker. The fact that you can choose to sacrifice a non-token creature is huge when compared to other Edicts.
So you feel like Modern is a format where there are like huge creatures that you might be facing down, whether that's a Murktide, whether that's... I mean, I guess at prime time, you're probably going to lose that matchup if that's happened. Same with an Archon. Like, this kills an Archon, though I don't know if you're going to win that game. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just the right size of effect. Like, it's cheap enough, but also big enough in what it can kill for this particular Rakdos deck.
Yeah. I think in this one it was just a sneaky surprise and it won, but because the rest of the deck is still insane. Like, I don't care what removal of choice you have if you go turn 1 Grief. Right? Turn 1 Scam Grief, the rest is irrelevant.
Yeah. Maybe that's all it is. Congrats to Cristiano7 on the results, nevertheless.
Yeah. Then after that, we have some... So I just found the post by the Atraxa winner and the Atraxa Showcase winner, and it's in Japanese, but if you translate to it, it literally says, Atraxa is your imagination. I have no idea what that's trying to go, but it's saying so many things with so less clarity. Atraxa is your imagination.
I love that. That's a good motto, a good slogan for the card.
The only loss was to Walls on round 2.
What? Okay.
But yeah, just Atraxa is your imagination is perfect. Could not have said it better.
I would love to know what that means. I would love to know.
What it's trying to say, if only we could. From there, we have some beautiful spies in Nahiri in a mini scam Maru, more of a Maru grinding shell.
Yeah, so I had not actually seen this particular collection of Marduk cards. I don't know if we call this like a fresh brew or if this is an archetype that's existed before. It has the Fury and the Grief, but instead of focusing on Malakir Rebirth and Feign Death and that sort of stuff, it's instead just saying, okay, Ephemerates, just Ephemerates, and then playing a lot of 2-mana creatures. It's playing 3 Blood Tithe Harvesters, 3 Tide Hollow Scullers, 3 Seasoned Pyromancers, 2 Archon of Cruelty, 3 Solitude, 3 Fury, 4 Grief. It's got your card board. It's got Brought Back, 2 copies, 3 copies of Persist. It's got 2 Fable of the Mirror Breakers, 2 Showdown of the Skulls, and 2 of the new Planeswalker Nahiri the Unforgiving.
This list is so freaking weird, but it's sort of something I wanted to do, playing a Maru Shell with Showdown of the Skulls and Eilish Norn. But this list has super top-notch quality interactions like Archon of Cruelty plus Persist, and then you have Tide Hollow Schooler plus Broadback and Blood Tide Harvester, because why?
Why or why not, right? I mean,
or why not?
If you could do that, why wouldn't you? The Sculler surprised me. I don't quite understand why there's Tide Hollow Sculler here. But I guess that's a good, I mean, it's a decent Ephemerate target. It's not a great Ephemerate target.
Super weird egg list. Glad it got a decent result. I want to play something like this. I'm sure the numbers are not correct.
So this comes from MTGO player Chomu Sukeon. Top 32 in one of the Modern Challenges this weekend, not the Showcase Challenges. This was just a regular Modern Challenge.
This is the Modern Challenge 32 is the Friday night one. Or the Saturday night one, which are like the super easy challenges. Those are the challenges to top 32 with a 3-3. Or a 4-3.
A friendly challenge, so it looks like this was a 4-2 result. So something, it's something.
Yeah, exactly. This is a challenge with like 70 or 80 players.
But let's talk about what Nahiri is doing in this deck, because that's the new card.
Yeah.
This build is taking advantage of every part of Nahiri in exactly the way that you predicted when you were hyping the card up. So you have the option to play Nahiri as a 3-mana, 3 Loyalty Walker, or a 4-mana, 5 Loyalty Walker. Does that make a difference? It depends on what kind of creatures you're playing.
Yeah. Here it's amazing with Blood Tide Harvester, which is an interaction I had only discussed a few days ago with a friend in Pioneer. But turn 2 Harvester, it's die, turn 3 Nahiri, you get it back, your opponent's creature get a spare blood, and Nahiri is still at 3 counters, and you use it as a removal spell? That's insanely value.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful start. I liked the idea of, okay, Blood Tide Harvester into Tyvar. You can do the exact same thing with Nahiri if you want to go into Mardu colors. Now, the difference is that you only get that Blood Tithe for 1 turn. So you better have something to kill, but yeah, keep the blood.
And I think the biggest difference is that Nahiri you can cast for 4 mana and get back Seasoned Pyromancer or Grief. Turn 1, Cameo with a Grief. Turn 2, play Tide Hollow. Turn 3 or 4, once you kill my Grief, I can 4 mana Nahiri get it back.
Yeah, and still have a 5 Loyalty Planeswalker in play after you do that. So that means you're only 1 uptick away from getting Fury and Solitude back if you decide to go that route.
Exactly. And the +1 isn't hideous. You have a +1 that forces an opponent creature to make a bad attack or attack you in order to protect itself. Like if your opponent only has 1 creature, it means Nahiri gets to 6 pretty comfortably. And worst case scenario, it's a looting effect for your Archons and such.
This is a sweet build. I do wonder if it's trying to do slightly too many things. Like maybe the Archons is just a bridge too far, but that package of Archon and Persist is taking up like more of the deck than I would want for a deck that's also trying to play Showdown of the Skulls.
I mean, he plays Showdown of the Skulls and brought back. How can I say no to our deck list, right? I'm a simple man with simple taste. But yeah, I can see myself adding 4 brought back, 4 ending, taking out the Persistent Archons, playing 3 Showdown, and just maximizing my 12 pitch elementals. The problem is super annoying for the mana cost, but the 4 Blood Tide Force Color really helps for the pitch elementals.
It is a surprisingly great card. I mean, that would be like Creature of the Year for whatever setting. Was that last year or was that technically the year before?
On what?
Blood Tithe Harvester. I just love that card so much. Format defining creature in Pioneer, but sure, it's good enough for Modern. Why not?
Good enough for Modern. I mean, this is the first time I will actually play like that Harvester in my life, because I have never played Rakdos in Pioneer. But it's gonna be exciting.
All right, so from there, with the rest of these lists, I look at them, I don't see much here that's going to stick around. I think we're mainly looking at experimental copies.
No, I think we have some slight might stick, like minor misstep as a 2-of or 3-of instead of a full playset.
In Murktide?
Yeah, in Murktide or in Control.
I mean, I did not see very many Murktide lists running the minor misstep. I saw one result from the grinder Medvedev was playing the full 4 copies of minor misstep main deck, but most of the Murktide decks were just like, we'll just play a more stock Murktide and beat up on the Titan players. For me, that's an open question. Like, I have not tested this myself, but the chatter I was seeing was suggesting that you should not play minor misstep.
Yeah. But besides the minor misstep and maybe some Mercurial Spell Dancer, if I'm wrong, I don't think it will see much play.
So the legacy players were testing this card heavily. I mean, it was one of the more expensive rares in the set for the first couple days online. I don't know what their verdict was. I don't think this has anything to do with Modern, though. I still think it's not really a consideration for Modern.
I mean, the card is insanely powerful, but there's so much removal in the format, even still I don't think it will see much hope. But 2 mana 2/1 unblockable, allowing you to double a spell every turn is insane.
I wouldn't call it insane. I would say it's like pretty good in the same way that Dreadhorde Arcanist is pretty good, but you're probably still going to lose. It's a 2/1 in a Ren and 6 format. You just can't do that. It's not realistic. But anyway, we'll see.
We'll see. Hopefully, there's some lists trying it around, and they will get some luck doubling expressive iterations, and I hope they will stick, because I love the card, and it's a fun one.
I do want to give a special shout out to one last Modern deck, and this comes to us from X-File, who's Felix Slew. Managed to get top 16 in this Friday Modern Challenge, the friendly challenge, as Ward was saying. This was one of the few decks that, while it's playing regular Modern cards, it actually seemed to like really be testing out 2 new cards, Skrelv and Melkator. So it's a Boros deck for the most part. I guess we could call it Boros Stoneblade. You know, it's got Ragavan, Esper Sentinel, and Stoneforge Mystic. But in addition to that, X-File is saying, all right, I want all 4 copies of Skrelv Defector Might. This is, you know, my legendary artifact, Giver of Runes, that's supporting 2 Mox Ambers alongside the Ragavans. And not only that, but X-File splashing into blue just for 2 copies of Melkator Purity Overseer. This is 1 blue-white for the 1/1 legendary Phyrexian Elephant Wizard who brings a Golem.
And in this deck, can easily make another Golem every turn, or at least every few turns.
You need to have 3 artifacts enter the battlefield during a single turn for that to happen.
I mean, turn 3, you go Darksteel Citadel, Malkator, plus Menmite, Thopter, Moxamber, or start with a Springleaf Drum, and that's already 3.
So yeah, help me understand this, because the cards I mentioned, Esper Sentinel, Ragavan, Skrelv, Stoneforge Mystic, it would not occur to me to then go, all right, I also want 4 Ornithopters, 2 Memnites. We're not really playing affinity payoffs.
I think those are in there to support Urza Saga, to get huge construct out of Saga, to make more goblins out of Malkator, to get Metalcraft for Galblast, Nerl Cyst. I think they are playing a support role. The one island in the sideboard destroyed me psychologically. It has caused some heavy damage on me. It's a toll that I have to... It's a burden that I carry on my life. Noticing that island on the sideboard.
Well, once they see how much you rely on Urza's Slugger, they're going to bring in Blood Moon, and then you need to be able to cast Melkator. There's even extra Melkator in the sideboard.
You need more Malkators.
I don't quite believe that this is possible, but they did very well. They went 5-2. They're playing 2 Ambers, 3 Springleaf Drums, and all these 0 drops. What are they spending that mana on? There's almost nothing expensive in the deck, except for Urza Saga as a mana sink, and, you know, if you want to be moving your Nettlecyst around. That's it. Like, there's 4 Galvanic Blast. I don't know. To me, I would say you'd have more mana than you can actually use and not enough firepower, but I guess I'm mistaken because the deck did very well.
Yeah, I can't explain most of it if you ask me. This seems like the delirium of a madman that actually worked. And he was as surprised as we are.
Kudos to X-File on the results. And for me, this is my pick of the week. A true brew in Modern.
A true brew.
Which is rare these days.
I mean, he's also the guy that created the Temur Murktide from like November that was playing Ledger Shredder, Counterspell, Endurances, Veil of Summer in the main deck for a few weeks.
I must have missed that one.
Yeah, this was the guy behind that chaos. Brennan 6 and Murktide in the same deck.
All right. Well, that's Modern being Modern. Let's take a break from Modern. Before we close things out, let's jump over to Pioneer and see what's happening in Pioneer.
Of course, and in Pioneer, what do we have besides a lot of decks in the League Dump?
That was encouraging. 42 decks in the Pioneer League Dump from earlier this week. Not a huge number of players in the league. I think when I was testing this week, there were usually about 300 players in the league at any one time, which is enough that it was firing. Saw a lot of nice variety, a lot of people trying different stuff, but the format is certainly less popular overall than Modern, which is a shame because Pioneer is actually pretty cool. And I should mention, before I forget, that the Pioneer Pro Tour is this weekend. So mark your calendars, watch some coverage, leave them some feedback, let them know that you're there, that you exist, that competitive players still exist and are still interested in tournaments before they take it away again.
Clearly.
Looking at the results from Pioneer, I don't think I put anything in the staples category. I actually struggled to find lists that looked like they had staying power. I struggled to find lists that were incorporating new cards in a way that felt like a permanent change to me. But that being said, there were plenty of brews, plenty of people trying out new cards in fun-looking brews, or just, experimenting with
with what we had.
Let's see what happens when I put Spelldancer in my Phoenix deck.
I actually found a decklist that brought me into Pioneer that was playing mostly new cards.
Oh yeah? Tell me about it.
I am the Mono White Yorion midrange, playing 4 Ossification, 2 Elish Norns, and 4 of the new Wanderer.
Oh, the 6-mana Wanderer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that deck kicked the tar out of me yesterday. That is a deck that is playing a lot of new cards. Maybe we should amend that statement. I guess I just didn't consider that a meta deck, but maybe if it turns out to be very good, that's going to be on the strength of some of these new cards for sure. So, Ossification, I wasn't that persuaded by it when David was promoting this as like the next big thing, but it was very impressive when I played against it. Kills anything, all you have to do is have a single basic plains, or basic land of any type, but plains in this case. Kill something, and then because of Yorion, you can just change the target later in the game.
Yeah. Just a good card.
Elish Norn, this is the question, right? Like, how good is Elish Norn? In our last show, David proposed a list where he was saying, yeah, Elish Norn is good enough that I just need to get it into play, and I will probably win the game. We have a 5-0 from one of our brewers on our Discord, DJeffMTG, with his own take on White-Green Elish Norn. He built a Yorion version. David should probably have also built a Yorion version. He just doesn't, as a rule of thumb.
Every single deck list should be a Yorion version, but people yet fail to see that. But they will. They will.
So if I look at DJeffMTG's version, this is from the February 9th 5-0 lists, he's doing like a quicker build of the ramp.
Yeah.
Right, and I like this quite a lot. He's got Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves, whereas in David's list, it was more of like a slower, okay, I'll get my Topiary Stomper and my Prosperous Innkeeper, my Kiora down. DJ's going to get a little bit quicker out of the gate with the turn 1 Elvish Mystic. A lot more on 2. Charming Prince, Gala Greeters, Prosperous Innkeeper. On 3 mana, Skyclave Apparition. 4 Elish Norn, 4 Combat Thresher. That's a nice little 3-drop. Little Faithless Brewing favorite there.
A sneaky 3-drop alongside a Skyclave.
Mm-hmm. Your Portable Hole for removal. Touch the Spirit Realm. Great find there, right? Dual purpose, removal or blink. 4 Asika's Chariot. And then, of course, the Yorion in the sideboard to put it all away.
The Yorion to keep everything together. Then the usual Eternal Wonder in the sideboard because the card is insane in these shenanigans.
So tell me about the Eternal Wanderer, the new Planeswalker, right? 6 mana. The one time this was cast against me, this just like completely wrecked my board.
So it's 6 mana. The +1 is either a protection ability or a removal or a blink effect because it removes something until the owner sends step, so you can blink your own creature. What happened to me a lot was I beat Monogreen Devotion just by looping Wanderer plus Yorion, exile my Yorion, gets back on end step, exile all my board so it returns on my ends on my opponent's end step so they can't attack my Planeswalkers or anything. Eternal Wonder, the 4 mana Wanderer comes back as well, so she can make a chooch on my opponent's end step, untap, put a counter on a creature, or remove something with a -2. Eternal Wanderer, blink Yorion again, and just keep bouncing my whole board.
That's disgusting.
But there is also the fact it's a 6 mana Wrath effect attached to a Planeswalker because you can just go -4, make your opponent keep a 1/1 that you gave them with Skyclave Apparition, and you get to keep a Yorion.
So a -4 for each player, you choose a creature that player controls, and then they have to sacrifice all other creatures that were not chosen. So you give them their worst creature, you keep your best creature. That only costs 4 loyalty, so you'll still have Eternal Wanderer in play after you do this ultimate, if we can call it that.
Yeah.
Leaving the opponent with a creature sounds like, oh, that's not so good, I don't want to do that. But I was impressed, right? This usually wins the game.
You choose the creature is the issue. The fact that most of the time this is each player selects creatures and they only keep one. No, this time you keep which creature each player controls, and that's huge. You can keep them. You always make them keep the worst creature.
So I think I was initially imagining this in like, okay, in blue-white control, I'm not going to have a creature, so it's like a really bad farewell type effect. But okay, who says you're playing blue-white control? This deck here,
yeah,
and I think similarly the mono-white Nykthos deck is going to have plenty of creatures to choose from. You're going to have a creature in play when you do Eternal Wanderer. You're going to have the better board afterwards. You're going to have 2 threats against half a threat after you do this play.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to exploit the +1 efficiently, and that requires Yorion or amazing ETBs or something like Elish Norn on board. And then the Wanderer is insane, because you just start adding up 2/2 double strikers as you make value and just go off. Settle the Wreckage was insane for me. The one thing you lose by going green, which was amazing for me, was Ossification.
I mean, it's possible that you can still play Ossification. Like, I haven't done the numbers, but
No.
You only need 1, right? You only need 1 basic.
Yeah, but 6 is nowhere near enough. Like, I was playing 16 basics almost in mono white. And I love that you have a one-off staple from my past. This is a card that I used to play in my first modern deck, like in the first deck I ever brewed. Can you guess which card from here was in my first build ever in Magic? Incredibly, it's not a creature. In Celestia by D-Chef, he has a one-off card that was in my first ever brew or deck I ever built for modern.
No, I have no idea. What would that be?
Grove of the Guardian.
Grove of the Guardian? What the heck is this? Land taps for colorless. It's from Ravnica Allegiance?
No, this is like original Ravnica.
Oh, original Ravnica. Okay, 3 green-white, tap 2 untapped creatures you control, and sacrifice Grove of the Guardian. Put an 8/8 green and white elemental creature token with vigilance onto the battlefield. Oh, this is even before they had create a token as a template.
Yeah, this is
God.
old. This is old.
Wow. Okay.
But this was in my first deck, so I just have some sort of fondness to it. So now I have to play it. Screw you, Chef. Hope you're hearing it.
Amazing. Okay, that's pretty sweet. So congrats to DJF on the 5-0. And yeah, I mean, this is one of the more promising developments in the metagame is what if Elish Norn turns out to be a just absolute powerhouse?
I have also heard a bit. Maybe Dan, you will be able to tell me a bit more about it, because I have only heard from it, but I haven't done my research about a new Rakdos Sacrifice deck. People are talking about a new development in Rakdos Sack in Pioneer.
I did not hear about this, so you'll have to fill me in.
No, I have no idea. I'm literally asking to fill me in. Let me do my research then. Twitter research, here we go.
Well, I have a couple of Rakdos sacrifice decks in our notes here because they were picking up some new cards, although I wouldn't necessarily call them new builds. One of them was a pretty stock Rakdos deck, just playing copies of Annihilating Glare. This is kind of a slightly improved version of Eaten Alive. It is gentler on the black when you pay full price, but more importantly, it lets you sack an artifact to get the removal effect. It does not exile, so that's the trade-off. The second version that was also playing Annihilating Glare, just one copy, was a little bit different. It was playing 4 copies of this really, really interesting goblin, Exuberant Fuseling. Single red mana, 0/1 trample, comes in with 1 oil counter and picks up additional oil counters whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. So you sack a treasure, you get an oil counter. You Cauldron Familiar die, you get an oil counter. Every time you go through the Cat Oven cycle, the Exuberant Fuseling gets more and more threatening.
It's huge.
And it has trample. So a 1/1 trample that can quickly get up to 3, 5, 6 power. It's very promising. I mean, it makes sense in this shell. I'm not sure that Rakdos is interested in a 1 mana 6/1 trample, but it's amazing that it has this option.
It's a 1 mana 6/1 trample. It doesn't go with the deck, but sometimes it's so efficient you just can't say no to it.
They were comparing this on Arena deck lists to Ravenous Squirrel, which is not legal in Pioneer, but if it were legal in Pioneer, it would be a very impressive card. Now, the Fuseling is going to be brittle, right? It's never going to get more than 1 toughness, but much better at dealing damage because of that trample clause.
Okay. Good old trample. What I'm seeing in Pioneer is no new decks, at least. Like, I have seen some changes to usual deck lists, but I'm not seeing nothing that surprises me as new, right? In Modern, I haven't seen a 5/0 yet, but I have seen a lot of rules regarding the... What's the name of him? The Rot Priest?
A lot of people trying it. 0 copies published, so... I mean, this is the question, right? Everything we've said so far is decks that actually happened.
Yeah.
That actually did well enough to get themselves published.
Will it get published? We'll never know.
There's more, right? There was more hype than this. We were definitely expecting to see a lot of people testing the Rot Priest, and that definitely happened. None of them achieved a 5/0. I saw a lot of Rot Priest in Pioneer, actually, people trying just like a green-white heroic / toxic hybrid with not only the Rot Priest, but the other random toxic creatures like the Crawling Chorus and the Jawbone Duelist, the Double Strike toxic creature. They were playing like Homestead Courage for like 2 targets out of 1 card. It was interesting. I don't know if it was better than Boros Heroic, but it was cool.
It was some cool novelty.
What do you think happened to the Rot Priest decks?
I think they're just too weak to removal, right? You're not doing something powerful enough to afford being that weak to removal spell. Like, you're doing something powerful, but the downside of just losing to your pack triggers if your opponent interacts can be devastating.
Right, that is the way to stop the combo. You let them do all their thing, let them cast their Summoner's Pact, then when they attempt to cast their Ground Rift or their Grape Shot, Storm actually is a distinct trigger. Before the copies are made, Storm itself goes onto the stack, and that's your window to destroy the Rot Priest so that you won't get all these random poison counters, and then your opponent will die because they Summoner's Pacted.
That's the issue for now. Maybe something will pop up, but I think we will only have to wait for a new development. Caleb Shader is back, which is a return from the Storm King who's trying to make waves with exactly that build.
Oh, I found the Rakdos deck that you were talking about. Okay, I had it lower in the list here. So the new build of Recto Sec, this is the one with Gleeful Demolition. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Gleeful Demolition. We like this card, right? Single red sorcery.
Of
destroy
course.
an artifact. If it was yours, you get goblins.
Goblins.
You can put that into a deck that has Experimental Synth, that has Oni Cult Anvil, that has Deadly Dispute, and Blood Tokens. Well, they're an Epicure Blood Tithe Harvester. Beyond that, I mean, you'd love to play Galvanic Blast, but in Pioneer you don't have that. You do have Shrapnel Blast. That's maybe good enough. Another way to sacrifice your synth. You're not quite at critical mass of disposable artifacts yet, so 4 Mishra's research desk comes in to be, a bunch of copies of artifacts and just additional grind, right?
Yeah.
Interesting to me, like the demolition, I would not think to put demolition into a attrition style deck like this. I think this deck would take a long time to kill someone. And yes, I mean, I can see why I want to sacrifice artifacts. I can see why it's nice to have 3 goblins, but 3 goblins are like a luxury. I don't think you need them per se, right? So a build here I'm looking at from Magic Online player Scipio's, what are they doing with the goblins? Well, you can sack it to Deadly Dispute. There's 3 copies of Meat Hook Massacre here, so your goblins will drain your opponent when they die. There's 2 copies of Vran, Executioner, Thane. Now, this is very interesting. It's like the double Blood Artist effect. So this does a 2-point drain when your goblin token dies. But that's pretty much it, right? I don't know like how much the Gleeful Demolition is doing for the build.
I'm not sure if it's doing enough for the build, but I love the aggression it provides. Also, the brand, it's super good. I think it adds up super fast, even if it's only once per turn.
Can happen once on your turn, once on their turn.
Exactly.
Although this is not playing the cat oven. I think when David was promoting this card, he was envisioning that you would at least be playing Cauldron Familiars, that you could, ensure that it happens on their turn and your turn. This deck is not doing that. This is just saying, all right, fair enough. I'll use Oni Cult Anvil on my turn, and I'll block on your turn.
If only that card hadn't been capped at once per turn, but it would have been insane. The best Blood Artist effect in history. But it's super easy to make it once and once every turn with stuff like Oni Cult Anvil, right?
Well, let's see. I guess the Oni Cult doesn't have any artifact creatures, so maybe I misspoke. This can only sack proper artifacts. So yeah, I guess you just have to use
Oni Cult on opponent's turn, Gleeful Demolition on my turn, go. Keep making 1/1s, keep making artifacts.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think the more common version of the Gleeful Demolition rack sack did not play Vran, so we'll see.
I'm surprised the Phyrexian goblins are not artifacts.
Why would a goblin be an artifact?
Because it's a Phyrexian, and sometimes Phyrexianized get artifacted. But they didn't. They're small. Small dudes.
They're not goblins online yet. They're not digitized.
they haven't went into the Goblins Online mode.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I like the spice. I appreciate people trying new stuff. I think we have to wait and see in Pioneer. Like, random Gruul deck playing Luca and Migloz and Thrun and Nissa and Tyvar Stand. I don't think any of these are like the card that's making that deck successful. We'll see if that sticks around. I see, people trying out Atraxa in their enigmatic decks and their creativity decks, and we'll definitely say more about that in just a few days when we do our Atraxa episode. But yeah, I think a wait and see approach in Pioneer. Sheoldred's Edict, we talked about that showing up in Dimir Control. Nahiri and Mardu vehicles, that makes sense. Anything you want to say about the cat deck in Pioneer, whether that's pure cats or just the new takes on Colossus Hammer?
The Cat Hammer one seems at least interesting. I don't know if it's good. I have seen a lot of talk about it. I'm just not sure if it's good. But I have seen a lot of people posting results, and it's the first time I see someone playing Kahira, like, fairly. So, can you complain about Kahira being played fairly? For once, like a real Kahira?
What, like a main deck Kahira?
No, Kahira as a companion for a real tribal deck that's actually trying to put a lot of creatures into play. Like Kahira are working as a lore as intended, not just as an extra card to pitch to Force of Vigor.
I don't hate it. So tell me about this cat deck. What are the actual cats one would play?
So, if I'm not mistaken, they are playing, of course, the 4 cats, the 4 new Kemba, the one that equips whenever a cat comes into play, which is the most important one. 4 of the 1/1 with lifelink Sacred Cat. 4 Hammers, 4 Brimas, 4 Cigara State, 4 of the 2 mana 1/1 Double Striker. That also has Eternalize for 5 or 6 mana, 4 Skrell. And then just Kahira, Bravery Elements. It's mostly a mono white with a soft red splash for sideboard and Fighter's Class.
So you're actually playing 16 cats, although 8 of those cats come back from the dead.
Yeah.
So that's the Sacred Cats and
The Pouncer.
the Adorned Pouncer. Your Kemba is your new card that makes this all worth it. And then Brimaz, now that you have an excuse, sure, Brimaz makes a lot of cats.
Also, there has been a talk about a new Pioneer deck that can combo from a really, really weird scenario.
Is this related to cats?
No, not at all, but I want to mention this before I forget, because this is going to blow your mind, because this is something that people have to brew with, but we haven't yet. No one has yet. But I sent this to someone because I had to save it somewhere because it was 4 a.m. when I spotted it. And I know damn well if I didn't send it to someone, I would forget about it. Here we go.
This is Mord's mind working in real time. As we're explaining a cat deck, he's like, also, this 4 a.m. brew idea, we need to talk about it right now. All right.
So we need to talk about 2 Morite of the Frost and a saga called Harald Unites the Elves.
No. Shutting this down.
Yes, we need to.
We don't need to talk about this. This sucks.
Do you know how it works?
This is like a terrible combo in Call Times.
No. But here you can now win with, like, if you have 2 Morite in the graveyard and you play a Harald Unites the Elves, you win on the spot. No extra mana, just 4 mana. Because Harald returns an elf or a Tyvar, so you mill your whole deck with the 2 double bouncing Mirones or whatever the name is called, and then you get the 3 mana Tyvar and you reanimate Tassa's Oracle.
So Chapter 1 of Herald Unites the Elves. All right, this is a 4 mana saga. 2 black, green.
Let's go! We got it!
For the sake of the listener, I'm going to actually finish this idea. All right. And we're coming back to the cat deck. I'm not forgetting about that. You can't just derail the cat deck. This is the first cat deck in history, in Pioneer history, and you want to hijack it to talk about Morit of the Frost. This is shameful. Yes. And you call yourself a cat lover. My God, Mord.
Oh my God. We're going to go back to cats. We're going to have a lot more cats.
All right. Herald Unites the Elves. 2 black, green, Enchantment Saga. Chapter 1. Mill 3 cards, then you may put an elf or a Tyvar card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Okay, I did not realize this actually got back a Tyvar card. So this is actually a new upgrade. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, that's the upgrade. That's the reason. Now you don't need an extra card in your... This reduces the amount of cards you need to combo exponentially.
So chapters 2 and 3 are not really relevant for the combo. It's just you're just competing with chapter 1 over and over again. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, but chapter 2 puts counters on your elves, makes them bigger, and chapter 3 makes your elves destroy things when they attack. So it's like an okay value play. Morit of the Frost is a 5 mana changeling. Technically legendary, but it's allowed to copy any permanent. And it remains legendary, is that correct?
Yeah.
So that's important for making this combo work.
So they start sucking each other.
That's why you actually need 2 copies of Morit, because you need to have your first Morit copy the saga, brings back the second Morit from the graveyard, then that comes in Legend Rules one of the Morits, so it can keep bringing itself back. Is that more or less correct?
Exactly.
I'm trying to spell this card so I can actually look it up.
Morite of the Frost, Moritte.
Okay, so it has Changeling. That's what allows Chapter 1 of Herald Unites the Elves to do this. So you get your 1 Herald Unites the Elves, you have your 2 Morits in the graveyard, you do this loop. How does the loop end? So you're saying I mill my entire deck this way, and at that point my last saga, instead of getting a Morit, gets back a Tyvar card?
Yes.
The new Tyvar has a reanimation ability. It -2s to bring back Thassa's Oracle.
And Shasuindege.
All right, I guess Morit is technically a cat since it's a changeling, so that's the segue.
See, this is a cat combo.
The new cat combo, perfect.
This is the new truth. Yeah, but this deck got surprisingly better with the fact you get a Tyvar that gets back a Thassa's Oracle at the end. Now you only need 1 card in your hand and 2 in your graveyard. Nothing else.
The deck was a 0 to begin with and has gotten 10 times better than it was before.
No. It was a 0.6 that got 10 times better and might be a 6.
Okay. I mean, have you actually seen a list proposed that actually works, or is this just a theoretical brew?
A friend played against it and had no idea what he was playing against when he got comboed on turn 4 on game 2, and then he just won on game 3 because he brought in 4 resting pieces.
I mean, we'll talk about this in our next episode when we talk about our Tyvar results. People play a lot of Graveyard Hate, and even though you don't think of Tyvar as a graveyard card,
yeah,
if you want to maximize Tyvar, it's going to involve reanimation, and their Graveyard Hate is going to be good against you. So don't be surprised when your sweet Morat Herald of the Unites the Elves deck
gets crushed by a playset of Rest in Peace.
And not even Rest in Peace, just anything. Unlicensed Hearse, Scavenging Ooze.
Annihil Spellbomb.
So that is a sweet combo that I don't think I would have ever come across. So I will grudgingly acknowledge that was interesting.
But with that being said, we can go back. Before we end for today, we can go back to cats for a minute before Dan kills me.
We gotta give the cats their time, Mort.
So, cats. So the proposed list by Claudio has been that, as I said, 20 creatures, 16 out of which are cats, 4 out of which are Skrelled, because it's like a keeper of runes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have 4 Colossus Hammer, 4 Open the Armory, 4 Cigara Save, 3 Brave the Elements, 3 one-off equipments to go get, which are Sword of Forge and Frontier, Maul of the Skyclave, 1 Shadow Spear, 21 plays, 1 Egancho. This is for a mono white shell. Your only ways to equip being Kemba and Cigara Save. Kemba being amazing in this specific shell because it's a 2/2 that gets the hammer on itself. Whenever a cat enters the battlefield, it gets a new hammer equipped, and for 5 mana it makes a cat to get equipped. Fortune Frontier has been a surprisingly good sword according to Claudio as well.
Oh, nice. So when I look at the deck list, half of the cards I recognize as trying to do the Colossus Hammer thing, sure. But what happens when you look at your opening hand and it's just a bunch of cats? Like,
I think you move as if you are playing a Hammer Time deck, and instead of Metalcraft, you have cats as your requirement to equip, right? You are playing a Hammer Time deck, but you have cats instead of Metalcraft. You can't keep without Medmites or Ornithopters, you can't keep without Kemba. I think it works in the same regard.
So I shouldn't be tricked by a hand that's like, ooh, a Skrelv into an Adorn Pouncer into a Brimaz.
No.
Like a curve out, it's 1, 2, 3.
Unless you're playing against a... Maybe you have like a Cigara, say, no hammer, and 3 cats and 3 dance, and then you keep, right? Like, you go turn 1 creature, turn 2 creature, turn 3 Brimaz, turn 4 you play a Cigara, say, and you start threatening the hammer. Because you have like a bunch of tutors for it, so you might get it.
I guess if you're playing Skrelv, you can't play Gator and your companions. Oh no, what a disaster.
Oh no.
Well, yeah. The more common deck that I thought was going to be more common was just like red-white Boros Hammer with the turn 2 kill.
I have seen a few red-white shells as well.
Yeah, exactly, the Cacophony Scamp kill. I played against that deck. It didn't look very good. I saw one player at 5-0 with it in the leagues, but it didn't make much of a splash beyond that.
Yeah.
So there you're looking at Cacophony Scamp, Fireblade Charger, probably Skrell for protection, and then Kemba as, again, your way to equip the hammer that isn't terrible, besides Sigarda's Aid.
Okay.
I don't know. These decks are still, like, not quite there.
But yeah, with that being said, I think that might be enough for us today.
Yeah.
As we have focused on the small changes in Modern Pioneer bringing out by 1, some not so tiny changes, some big ones, and we hope it's just the beginning.
I hope so. Can't wait to see what week 2 brings.
A lot of 5-0s with cats, if we count Moral of the Frost as a cat. So thanks so much everybody for tuning in. Hope you're gonna hear back from us in a few days, and have a lovely night. Bye bye.
Deck list for this episode can be found at our homepage, faithlessbrewing.com. And tune in on Friday for new brews with Atraxa Grand Unifier, plus testing results with Tyvar Jubilant Brawler. Support for this podcast is provided by brewers like you. Join the Faithless family and help support the show at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing for Discord access, bonus content, and more. That's all for today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.